ever witnessed someone say, if you don't like it, leave, and everyone left? What was the story? Story 1. My great-grandmother is notorious for being a mean old. It was Thanksgiving at her house, and much of the extended family were there. She started harping on my mom's cousin for something, like she always does. My mom's cousin was like, "Grandma, can't we just have a nice dinner for once?" And great-grandma was like, "If you don't like it, leave." And every last cousin, aunt, uncle, and all of their food disappeared to my aunt's house. Oh. Story 2. When I was a kid, I stayed at a friend's house for the weekend. My friend's mother was one of those parents who, at the dinner table, required their kids to eat everything on their plate, come or high water. I had been served way too much food and said that I can't eat it all. The mother said to me, "You can either finish your food or leave the table." I promptly left the table. This totally blew the minds of my friend and his siblings. It had never occurred to them that leaving the table was actually a viable option. When my mother picked me up the next day, my friend's mother told her what had happened and said I was the rudest little boy. I think my mother was actually quite proud of me. Story 3. A former industrial job. I used to have said that during an all-hands meeting, we were understaffed, underpaid, and overworked, and everyone knew it. Instead of the 21 ratio of 2 machines to 1 operator for safety reasons, would have 4, 6, 8 because people were getting paid less than most retail jobs to bust their asses in some of the most disgusting work I've ever done. You'd come home covered in moldy coolant, metal shavings, and stink. Machines started breaking down because they'd never shut them down to perform maintenance on them. So would often have massive problems, which of course meant even more overtime to make up for the broken machines. And people started quitting. Management's response was to tell us that they expected us to work harder because they couldn't get more help in. One of my coworkers, who generally gave no, asked, in front of everyone in that room, why they didn't try raising the poor wages and see if they could entice people that way. The response was, "We're not having that conversation right now. If you don't like it, you can quit." Who? Buddy, was that the wrong thing to say? As soon as word got out to the other shifts, what can only be called an exodus began. We lost half of each shift within the week. I stuck around for a few more weeks until I had a conflict with my schooling at the time, since one of my classes got out about 30 minutes before my shift, 30 minutes away. So I warned them in advance that I might be a few minutes late one day a week, maybe, and got told that I needed to decide what was more important, my school or my job. So I quit and giggled my off at the sign in the HR office that said we had an almost 80 turnover rate, never to find out what happened to that hellhole. But I can't imagine anything good with losing that many people. The poor HR rep seemed like she was just so done with everything and seemed so very apologetic as she took my badge. Story 4. Not exactly, but my sister had a habit of picking fights with people, and when it wasn't going her way, she'd tell them she was removing them from her life. She's done it to boyfriends, longtime friends, sorority sisters. She did it to me twice. The first time, I roll my eyes because she's younger than me. After the second time, my sister told me, "I'm removing you from my life. You're toxic," and unfriended me and told family I was toxic in reality. I wasn't letting her be toxic, selfish, and under the influence of whatever she was on with to me, my spouse, or my kids, so she decided it was a good idea to threaten us. I said, "Okay, fine," per her usual routine. After a few weeks, she came around and wanted to pretend she never said the things she said. I didn't respond. She claimed it all was a joke, and she had a right to be in my kids' lives. I haven't spoken to her in 2 years. I honestly do not miss her drama, and it was the best decision for my family. It highlighted how bad the generational dysfunction was in my family, and how it was expected to just overlook bad behavior and people please for everyone else's comfort. I realized that I didn't want my kids to repeat that cycle. I vowed to always put my kids first. I'm not popular in my family right now, but I've never been happier, and this was the first year I got to enjoy holidays without having panic attacks or dread. When someone walks out of your life, let them, edited to add paragraphs. Story 5. I was the whistleblower in my workplace. I witnessed my manager mentally and physically abuse a 101-year-old woman. I work in a care home. I raised the alarm, and staff above the manager didn't deal with things quick enough, and over worry of a bad name press had gotten a hold of the story. They were trying to keep it quiet, and we're going to allow this manager back to work on a final warning. We were a small team, about 8 of us, when they told us that all of us reached into our bags and threw our notices at them. It was all of us, or her a week or so later, and then paying her $15K she was gone. Worst thing is, we were a charity care home. She basically got thousands and thousands of pounds for abusing a vulnerable elderly woman. Edit, thank you for the award, kind stranger. Story 6. My mother is well known for her Christmas, Easter, whatever tantrums. She threw a particularly good one when I was about 14 and yelled the infamous line, "My uncle and aunt piled themselves, their daughter, and myself, and about 5 of my siblings into their 4WD. And we all left to go to their place, picking up KFC for lunch on the way." Don't know what kind of Christmas my mother had, but ours was pretty good in the end. So glad we didn't get pulled over. Story 7, my aunt's 40th birthday. It had been a long day, and we were set to eat dinner, but she decided that she wanted to open gifts. My mom tried to explain that everyone was hungry and to just wait until we were done eating, or at the very least until everyone had a plate. She starts getting and saying that it's her day, and that if we don't like it, we can leave. Now my dad, not too fond of my aunt for reasons I won't get into here, gets up and walks out. Well, this started a chain reaction. The only people left were my mother and grandmother. My aunt starts yelling and getting upset, to which my grandmother replies, "Maybe don't be, hey, it's been 10 years, and she has never acted that way again." Edit, okay, for all you hitting me up about my grandmother, she's a great woman. She raised her right. This behavior stems from her first and only marriage, where her husband let her do and act however she wanted. This party happened a year after her divorce sake. Final edit, I want to be pissed at a lot of you shits for coming from my grandmother's name, but there are so many others that understand the roast. Thanks, y'all. I was going to delete this comment, but it will stay for the sake of the thread. As for the votes and award, thank you as always. We got us a good space. Happy New Year. New management was hired and took over scheduling from me, who was covering for a now-gone manager without understanding any of the intricacies of scheduling. After 2 weeks, we had an all-staff meeting to address grievances based on her incredibly poor method of scheduling, and she refused to back down, dropping the famous ultimatum. Out of a staff of 40 or so employees, I think maybe half a dozen stayed. Story 8, my boss said, "Don't like it? Try finding a job like this one with better pay and benefits." So I Google it, and now I just had my 14th year anniversary at the new job. Story 9, unless you're a WoW raider, this probably doesn't apply. But I've been in a number of raid formations, especially back in the day, where the raid leader announces some wonky loot rules that disproportionately benefit himself, close friends, and would then say, if you don't like it, leave. Yeah, we left. Story 10, yes, or pretty close to at least. I was a founding member and treasurer of a skydiving society at my university in Aberystwyth. I myself am teetotal, but I still went out on the weekly social nights, which, in Aberystwyth, were just spent in the local bars and pubs, as there is nothing else to do there at night. I am pleased to say that my owning a car, so giving people lifts to the drop zone, plus my being teetotal designated driver nanny on nights out, plus my house being close to the nearest drop zone 4 hours away, just south of Birmingham, and letting the club sleep there on occasion, had made me rather well liked. We went to one of our usual favorite haunts, Lord Beeching's. Only this time the owner was there behind the bar with one other staff member who looked rather glum serving and was in a foul mood. All 25 or so of us went in and ordered drinks. He served 23 of us, then IDD my friend. Even though he was clearly over 18, a student with 24 other students, a irregular, the other staff member vouched for him, etc., made him walk back to halls to get his passport before he would serve him. This was already eliciting grumbles from the club, but everyone accepted pubs had to be careful about restrictions and carried on. Then I asked for a glass of water, which he was legally required to provide. I might add, he replied, "I'm not muddying my glasses for some who isn't paying." I simply raised my eyebrows, as I had never encountered such a response to a request for a glass of water before. After a moment for it to set in that this guy wasn't making a weird joke, he really wasn't going to give me a glass of water, I turned around to the room of 24 other people. I swirled my finger in the air and shouted, "Skydiving Club, drink up, this won't serve me." So we're leaving. Everybody drank up immediately, and we all left. The Skydiving Club never went there again whilst I was a member, and everyone else I told the story to avoided it as well. Story 11, I had an insufferable supervisor once, and would have these 15-minute pre-shift meetings. Dude would just stand in there and lord over everybody for the duration and talk about how bad we were doing. The phrase, we was one of his favorites. Finally, one day, he's really on one and summons the testicular fortitude to say, if you don't like it, there's the door. His second-in-command got upset, F this, and walked out. He stood there, stunned for about 5 seconds, and then ran out the door after him. He later ended up having some mental instability and quitting. The second-in-command is now the supervisor. I survived all of these meetings by default, assuming he wasn't talking to me. Story 12, yup. At a potluck, we had a Karen who went on a power trip and made rules that only benefited her. She screamed, "If you don't like it, leave." The other mothers, fathers, all picked up their kids, took their dishes from the potluck and left. It was only the Karen and us security guards. We weren't able to leave because we were on the job. However, we didn't share our pizza with her. Story 13, it was a typical 80s teenager house party. I don't even remember how we ended up at this guy's house, but I only knew him by name at school, and we had never hung out before. There was a pony keg and about 15 people there. So far, so good. I remember someone asking the guy if he had any music. The dude shrugged it off and said maybe later. First we have to get in the right mindset. He left the room and came back with a Crown Royal bag. Everyone was thinking he was about to twist up a joint cool with us. He then pulls out a huge bag of cocaine and starts lining it up in front of us without saying a word. Now, I was okay with a little weed, and I wouldn't care if someone was doing coke in the back room discreetly, but I never did it myself and was definitely not cool with someone having such a large amount in the open. I politely said, "Hey man, that's more of a backroom thing." A couple of others around me said something similar, and the whole vibe changed. The guy noticed everyone was uncomfortable, but nevertheless said, "It's my house. If you don't like it, you can leave." He'll never forget how quietly and orderly everyone proceeded to leave. I would guess there must have only been 2 or 3 people left. It was awesome. Story 14 and an off-campus college party. The host, a tenor voice major in the music department, started playing Wagner and Verdi operas full blast. When those attending asked him to play something else that they could all like, he said, "You all need to learn to like opera. If you want to give it a fair try, you can always just leave," and with that, everyone left. Story 15 had a teacher, "Nobody like pull the old if you don't want to behave. You can leave my classroom on a classmate." The whole class got up and left. Things hadn't been going well in this class since he had started teaching us. The main problem was that he was a really bad teacher. Like, he seemed to have no knowledge on his own subject history, or at least was incredibly bad at transferring his knowledge. We didn't have any respect for him, and he tried to keep us in line by being extremely strict, but in an unfair way. Wouldn't let anyone ask questions anymore, because he could never answer them. Screamed at students if they quietly asked their neighbor for a pencil. That sort of stuff. I don't remember what my classmate did that angered the teacher, but it was something minor. We were all fed up with him, so when he told my classmate to just leave, we all did. Felt really rebellious, and like I was part of a bigger plan or something. It was great. We got into trouble for it, but also got the teacher fired, so it was worth it. Story 16, grade 8 language arts class. To preface this, I was never an aggressive student, generally the teacher's pet. The person who, if a teacher was away for the day, would be tasked in their notes to the sub to be able to assist, give them directions. The time, 20-some-odd years ago, shortly after the Columbine shooting, this context is critical to the he story. Location, middle of nowhere, Alberta, a small country school. So our regular teacher was out for the day and had left a note directing the sub to ask me if she had questions about what had been covered. Sub comes and reads note and opens the teacher's weekly planner, then begins writing our words for the weekly spelling test on the board, except she opened the wrong week. Instead of the current week, she had opened the prior week. At this point, being the goody two-shoes that I was, and much to my classmates' dismay, although our teacher would have corrected us when she was back, so it wouldn't have helped them, I raised my hand and politely informed her that I believed she had gotten the page wrong, as we had previously covered this material. What happened next? I couldn't make up. She lost her. She started ranting about how teens in general, and me specifically, were a danger to her, how she didn't know who were her friends and her enemies in the class, who had never had this up before, how she had every right to fear for her life. She then capped it off by saying she was the teacher, and if we wanted to think in her classroom, well, there was the door, we were welcome to leave. I was never a popular child, so I wasn't really expecting one of the popular kids and my sometime bully to stand up collectively with everyone else, pull me to my feet, and we all walked out. Now, I mentioned above that we attended a small country school. There was no place to go, so we just sat in the hallway until the principal came down to chew us out for not being in class. The sub was gone by the start of the next period, and the principal taught the rest of our teachers' classes that day. Story 17, my lecturer wanted us to have an extra class online after the exams because we had missed a lesson during the semester. We asked him if he could at least move it to the afternoon, but he insisted it be at 9 a.m. So everyone logged in a classroom, but only 2 people were answering his questions. He then decided to take the register, and everyone was present. Then he said, "I'm not forcing anyone to be here. If you don't want to participate in a lesson, go." Everyone logged out immediately except me, because I had gone to the bathroom. When I came back, I found him calling for my name. He later logged out and sent me the PPT of the lesson. Story 18, when I worked third shift at Walmart, the management tried to change a shirt policy overnight. They all of a sudden decided that we had to wear blue-collar shirts and not blue T-shirts anymore. One of the managers, named Jackie, who was a total, came up to my 2 friends and myself and told us we had to either go buy new shirts right then or go home. We left. Frozen dairy didn't get done that night, and we got to go home and play Destiny all night. Next day, they never said another word about our shirts. Walmart, by the way. My husband worked at a really toxic job for a while. As staff got fired or quit, they weren't replaced to cut costs, and instead the remaining 2 employees were worked to death. Finally, the owner, who was a shitty boss and terrible businessman, called a meeting with the 2 to try to force an attitude adjustment. The employees tried to be constructive and talk about things they saw that needed to be improved upon to make things work better. And of course, this egotistical owner wouldn't have it. He told them if they couldn't handle the expectations that they were free to leave. So they did. Both of them left immediately and never set foot in the store again. I don't think the owner was expecting that at all. He expected them to grovel and beg to keep their jobs and thank him for the opportunity to work 70-hour weeks under his tyrannical rule. My husband called me after that meeting and was so upset he couldn't hardly tell me what happened. He was terrified. He was so sure I would be angry at him for quitting his job when we really weren't in a position that I could support us. I wasn't mad at all. I was so proud of him for not taking that I was being doled out to him and doing what is best for his mental health. He's a good man and deserved better. Story 19. Every year, the military has this event they host named the Warrior Games. It's like the Olympics for men and women who were injured while serving. I'm a decent cyclist, so I was selected to represent the Marine Corps team in that event. I'm not sure where they hold the event these days, but the year I was selected, they flew us out to Colorado Springs. When I got there, I quickly realized that 99 of the Marines competing were still active duty. I had retired a few years prior, so it was weird being around Marines again. Almost immediately after arriving, the senior leaders and officers in charge began demanding that I get my hair cut and to shave my beard. At first, I laughed it off and thought they were joking. Turns out they were quite serious. The lady who was in charge of the Marine team was a major, and she took me off to the side and ordered me to get a haircut. I reminded her that I had retired a few years prior and was no longer required to abide by active military grooming standards. Then a light bulb went off in her head, and with a smirk, she said, "Well, you either get a haircut or you can go home. Your choice." So I smirked back and said, "Guess I'm flying home." They had already pre-purchased our airplane tickets home, so all I did was call Delta, explain what happened, and the lady on the other end transferred my ticket to a flight home the next day. I had taken a few weeks off work to attend this event, so I just went back home and enjoyed my time off with my hair and beard. Story 20. My old management team had rearranged my whole schedule, made a lot of changes, and taken me off one of the areas I worked hard to get into better shape to a start from scratch again, somewhere new, handing my other project over to newer team members. They announced this at a meeting with everyone present, where it soon transpired I was the only one who wasn't aware in advance of these changes. I went to speak privately with a manager and explained they had changed all my working day hours and placements without even mentioning it could be a possibility, alongside some other things. She exclaimed, "This is your job, and you will go where we tell you when we tell you. If you don't like that, then leave." I handed my notice in. They spent a while asking me to reconsider, but to be honest, this was the straw that broke the camel's back, and I'm so glad I left. Although I do remember taking a walk later that evening and thinking to myself, I'm technically unemployed, but I solved it before my notice period ended. Story 21. I work for a hoisting transport contracting company at a large refinery, and for the most part, it's very relaxed. Basically, it's more cost-effective to have more than enough people just in case something goes wrong. So a lot of the time, we just sit around waiting for something to do. My foreman, for some reason, doesn't like this and thinks we all have it too easy, even though he is totally redundant and literally not needed at all here, and was telling one of the guys one day that maybe he needs to go to the yard, our main office we are dispatched from, and all our equipment is stored, and see what a real job is like. So he did. He called the office and transferred there permanently, and our foreman on site lost his mind. He didn't even say anything about it for weeks, but we all knew what happened. One day, I even asked if guy that left was on vacation or something. He just mumbled yes, something like that. Story 22. Worked at Thai restaurant. Owner's daughter, who was manager, left town for a couple weeks, and we realized once she left that she was stealing our tips, tipping us out way less than herself for over a year if working there with her. When she got back, we confronted her at the end of the night during her shift since she refused to meet with us in an official group meeting. The four of us servers called her out, and she said, "If you don't like it, then get out or sue me." We were all 18 to 20 years old and didn't really know what to do, so 3 of us quit on the spot in that moment and walked out the door. You'll never forget the look on her face. Story 23. Well, I wasn't here for this one, unfortunately, but my high school English class had this scenario. The senior AP English teacher was notorious in my graduating class for not really giving about a lot of the students. From the way I was told, they were going over quizzes to which the teacher started going over some vague subjective response, and how it was wrong. The students started arguing, and the conversation came full circle to where the teacher started agreeing with the students. Once he realized this, he started backing off that answer and correcting students again, causing more frustration. This resulted in the students saying, "There's no point in learning this if we're wrong, even if we were right at one point." Well, if there's any of you who don't find this valuable, you can stand up and leave the classroom. 2 students of 28 remained. I was absent cause I was sick, but what a sight it would have been. Story 24. Had my first job as a massage therapist. My friend from school also got a job there. The business was taken over by this lady who decided to also hire her friend, who hadn't even graduated massage therapy school. The owner's friend would start sessions way earlier than necessary if the clients got there early, which meant that sometimes my friend and I would sometimes have to scramble to get ready for couples massages with her. For example, my friend was still commuting and was a few minutes away, and the owner's friend tried to start having the clients get ready. It was frustrating because we'd have no time to talk to the clients before the sessions like we were supposed to. One day, I politely told her that my friend wasn't there yet, and she should wait to put the clients on the table until he was actually there so he could talk to his client. She got super mad and told the new owner I was being rude to her. Well, the new owner clearly got a different story and started texting me telling me I was in trouble. I didn't ever find out what the actual issue was directly from her, but I knew it was because of her friend, because of how quickly it happened after I told her friend to wait to start that session. I tried to set up a meeting in person to talk about it, but she kept refusing and said we could talk about it over text. I decided I wasn't going to deal with that unprofessional behavior from a manager and walked in to tell her I quit. Turns out my friend also quit that day because of her friend's nonsense. The business owner was left with her unlicensed and uncertified friend and a stand-in that was extremely unreliable on a really full schedule. Edited some phrasing. Story 25. Something like this happened to me in my previous HOA, circa 15 years ago now. We were at a board meeting in the HOA president's unit, and he was power tripping and trying to illegally abuse a particular owner he didn't like personally. When the rest of the board wouldn't go along with what he wanted, he basically said, "Fine, I quit, get out." We did, and reconvened at my unit, where we quickly decided to do the appropriate thing. Older people can be quite the dicks in my experience. Story 26. I think it was 6th grade. We were all playing a game of truth or dare, but one of the really pervy boys started dating the girls to kiss some of the other boys or lay on them. All the girls told him to knock it off, but he just said, "If you don't like it, leave the game, everyone." And I mean everyone, we had 14 to 17 people that got up and left him there. Story 27. I was seeing a girl, 3rd date. She was an hour late and got thrown out for smoking a joint in the shitter at the restaurant. I made some comment about her being chaotic, and she gave the "OL, can't handle me at my misdemeanors, don't deserve me at my conjugal visits." So when she got distracted, I ducked into a gangway and legged it to the train. Story 28. Went to a friend's party, and it turned out to be a sausage fest of about 25 guys and no women. A couple of guys asked him, "Are there going to be women coming to the party?" He said something to the effect of they were invited, but he wasn't a pimp running a house who could make them show up. About 15 minutes later, there was only 4 of us left, so we played video games and ate pizza the rest of the night. Story 29. It wasn't everyone because it only applied to me. But I was working at a fast food restaurant in high school when we got a new manager who tried to be a hard ass and enforce every rule to the letter of the law. Most of these rules were irrelevant and had been ignored by all previous managers. So he caught out a lot of people who had been there for years and didn't even know what they were doing was technically against the rules. I got in trouble because I pulled out my phone to read a text from my mom. This was 2004. At the time, my mom would have never texted unless it was important, and technically using your phone on the line was against the rules. I thought he just wanted to look at what kind of phone I had, because he said, "Hey, can I see that?" But after he got it, he locked in the office and told me I couldn't have it until the end of my shift. I told him he had to give me my property back immediately, and he said, "If you don't like it, you can quit." So I did. A few folks tried to talk him down, but he was steadfast and refused. I found out later that every other manager told him he was an idiot. He didn't last long. Fun bonus, my mom's phone had gotten a virus, and the text it sent me and everyone else in her phone book was a picture of a gummy bear with a penis. Story 30. When I was still in school, we had this great and fun teacher that really did his best for us. Unfortunately, we had some serious bullshits in our class. Not paying attention and just talking through him. I felt so sorry for him. One day he had enough and, still kind of calmly, tells anyone not interested to just leave. Those shits didn't think twice and just stood up and left. What's more sad is that almost everybody blindly followed those shits. Even people that I never expected that to do. I sat there probably with 2 others. That's the moment I realized I'm never ever going to follow blindly like sheep anymore. I never really done this, but I was often afraid to walk a different path. Even 18 students literally paying for their study themselves can be serious ungrateful shits. I know it's bad, but I secretly hope they end up without certificate and a shitload of debt from that study. Story 31. Many moons ago, when I was 13 or 14, I was pretty active in the Boy Scouts. I had come up through Cub Scouts, and it was a great way for me to spend time with my dad and friends, learn new skills, and overall experience life. My dad had always been involved in some form or fashion throughout these years in Cub Scouts as an assistant scoutmaster or even just as a helpful parent. It was nice. He just wanted to be involved and spend time having fun with me, his only son. In case you're unaware, when going from Cub Scouts younger scout groups called packs and dens to Boy Scouts older scout groups called troops, you generally, at least in our local area, change groups completely, meeting location, etc. The local Boy Scout troop we joined after Cub Scouts seemed warm and welcoming at first. After the first year, it became apparent there was a lot of infighting between assistant scoutmasters and parents over activities and outings, and not enough top-down leadership from the troop's head scoutmaster. This filtered down many times to the scouts themselves, creating cliques within the troop. The fun was over. My dad did a quiet Homer Simpson melting into the bushes meme and resigned. Even then, he was still very supportive of my involvement in the scouts, but he didn't want to be a part of it any longer. 6 to 8 months later, in working towards one of the many achievements in Boy Scouts, along with many of the other scouts. So the assistant scoutmasters start assigning higher-ranking scouts to lower-ranking scouts to advise and lead us towards this achievement. And I get assigned one of the holier-than-thou scouts whose father was one of the worst offenders. So this scout starts assigning a pretty aggressive schedule of goals to complete by a certain date, none of which was really achievable, especially with all of my activities: school, martial arts, motorsports, scuba diving. I was a fairly active teen. I pushed back with suggestions on what I could actually accomplish within a reasonable amount of time. He wasn't having any of it. Finally, he makes the abrasive comment, "You're going to have to get your priorities straight." To which I look straight, deadpan at him, and respond, "You're absolutely right. No emotion and no judgment in my statement." I close my scouting book, pack my stuff into my bag, get up, push my chair in, and walk out of the building with him, still sitting there wondering what just happened and how to respond. Waited outside for the rest of the scout meeting for my parents to pick me up. 3 or 4 of my friends dropped out within a month as well, which I had nothing to do with. I learned a great life lesson that day that has served me well, especially throughout high school. Learn to spot toxic people in toxic situations and avoid them. You'll be a much happier and relaxed person. Story 32. Back in the mid-90s, a coworker was under a great deal of stress. He was performing a low-skill role in a high-skill industry during a tremendous crunch that was very important to the company, entry-level stuff, more a job that's a stepping stone than a career. Despite that, he was an integral member of the team with institutional knowledge background that couldn't be replaced overnight. Actually, it couldn't be replaced at all. During a team meeting to go over status, progress, etc., he asked our boss for some help as he was overwhelmed and simply couldn't keep up anymore. Boss said, "If you can't handle it, there's the door." Dude just stood up, and without a single word, he walked right out. Boss ended up having to do his job until completion of the initiative. Story 33. A math class in high school. All the math teachers were pretty chill. They knew the majority of kids hated math, so they try to make it fun, wouldn't be as strict as other teachers, and would treat us like adults, happy to just chat about any old thing as long as we tried our best and did the work. One day, we had a student teacher come in and teach the class as part of her studies. Up until that point, she had been observing for a couple weeks. She wasn't bad, and she had tried to emulate the other teachers. And as an assistant teacher, she was good. Well, when it was her turn to teach alone, it all went to. She constantly lost the attention of everyone and was generally being a hard and not really helping people who didn't understand. Halfway through, she flipped, didn't like that she couldn't control the class, and just shouted at us all saying, "If you don't like it, then you don't have to be here." So there we were. It was a few seconds of us all thinking, wait, did she just tell us we could leave? Then everyone got up and left. Our regular teacher was sitting at the side observing. He just looked exasperated AF and didn't stop anyone, just told us all to have a good day and he'd see us next week. I don't remember ever seeing the student teacher again. Story 34. I once witnessed a couple on a street fighting. The woman was going on, and the poor fellow looked so dejected. He said something that I couldn't catch, and she screamed, "Fine. If you want to then just leave." Well, he turned around and walked away in the opposite direction. She stood there with her mouth open, in shock. Story 35. Okay, maybe not everyone left, but my mother-in-law got me involved into a charity. First I was a volunteer, then a secretary to the board, and back to volunteer again. Things started changing. People who got on the board were no longer true to the organization's mission, and at times ethically challenged. Using high school volunteers for the charity in a political campaign. Using artwork obtained through contest beyond scope of the contest rules without pay. Anyway, during one of the meetings, which was meant to be planning for a big annual event, but was more like hazing to be honest, I asked myself, why am I allowing anyone to treat me like whipping girl? So I openly asked the board members if this tone is the new standard of the organization's interactions with people volunteering their time and talent to them. The president told me I was being impertinent and rude, and if I could not stand the heat to get out of kitchen, to which I replied that I quit volunteering. He told me then I had to submit my resignation in writing in order for it to be acceptable. I sat down, scribbled my resignation on a notebook page, and presented him with it. He told me he won't accept it because it was not submitted according to the bylaws. I told him he was incorrect and reminded him I wrote the bylaws. They were too cheap to hire a lawyer to write them. And they clearly state that volunteer resignations do not require board approval. And I left. I was too pissed to drive home. So I went to a cafe across the street. A few minutes later, 2 other longtime volunteers and all the high school volunteers walked in. They all did quit effective immediately as well. The annual event did not take place. The board was sued by the entity it was supposed to be solely supporting for mismanagement and misappropriation of funds. The charity later involuntarily dissolved by the state due to reporting failures. Custodian was appointed who allocated the remaining funds. In hindsight, it was the right time to jump the ship. For me, best part was the board let the insurance lapse guess who normally kept track of the renewals. So the legal expenses and part of the judgment went out of their own pockets. Talk about heat in the kitchen.